Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Lang. I'm your BOMA Greater Dallas president, and welcome to the second virtual luncheon of 2020. We're so excited to have you all here. Over the years, the July luncheon has always been the annual Bring Your Team luncheon, and this luncheon's always been the highest attended luncheon of the year, and it's always a blast. But due to safety and social distancing requirements, we had to switch it up a little bit this year. And since the first virtual went so well, why not do another one? So today's sponsor is a cornerstone partner and a longtime supporter of BOMA Greater Dallas. Interstate Restoration, thank you for your sponsorship of this event and for being here with us today. I'd also like to welcome today's speakers from the Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance, Carl Falconer, President and CEO, and David Gruber, Development and Communications Director. I've always been intrigued to know how BOMA Greater Dallas can do more for our community, especially this one in which we have so much interaction with. MDHA hosted a meeting in September and it's with their Hard Conversation series. And this one was with the District Attorney, John Crusoe, and he was discussing his plans on decriminalizing low-level offenses. So after this event, I thought it was so interesting, great information. I thought that I should reach out to MDHA and see how BOMA Greater Dallas can do and to assist in what they're doing. But you know, when I met with them, I just had this great connection with them and I wanted to share the information with our members. So let's welcome Carl and David. I would also like to recognize our official sponsors, the group that helps make our events possible. Starting with our cornerstone partners, we have April Building Services and AMST Elevator Interiors, Interstate Restoration, Land Care, and Mooring Construction and Restoration. Thank you to our cornerstone partners for your continued support. Next, our keystone partners, America's Corporate Building Maintenance Incorporated, Blackman Mooring and BMS CAT, Britain Building Maintenance Incorporated, CertaPro Painters of Far North Texas, Citywide Building Services, Flynn Companies, Property Paving, Reef Parking, Texas Roof Management Incorporated, and United Mechanical. Thank you to our keystone partners for all that you do. And last but not least, we have our foundation partners. 5, ABM, Empire Roofing, Facility Solutions Group, Night Restoration, Select Commercial Services, Sun Commercial Roofs, and United Protective Services. Thank you to our foundation partners. You are so appreciated. Again, a big thank you to all of our allied companies that participate in our official sponsor program. We truly value your support and your friendships, and we wouldn't be where we are today without you all. So thank you very much. Now I'd like to recognize our 2019-2020 TOBY International winner. TOBY winners were announced during the International Watch Party just a couple weeks ago on July 9th. We had one international winner this year, Salmon's Cancer Center, managed by Physicians Realty Trust, property manager Susan Leanweaver. Not only is Susan now an international winner, she is also our current awards chair. Congratulations, Susan, to you and your team. I'm so proud of you guys. You make BOMA Greater Dallas so proud. You should all be a part of this process for the 2020-2021 award cycle. We'd love to see you standing on the stage as a winner, but you have to start by entering. The official TOBY call for entries is open now through the end of the month. Head over to the BGD website to get your building registered. Who's ready to get outside and have some fun in the sun? Well, lucky for us, the BGD Sporting Clays Tournament is almost here. The tournament is on Friday, August 21st at Elm Fork Shooting Sports. We had such a great turnout last year, and I hear it'll be just as competitive this year. So start drafting your team and get to practicing. It's time to shoot some plays. Okay, I know it doesn't feel like we should be talking about this, but the gala is coming up. It's only 5 months away, and you know, before we know it, it'll be here. Sponsorships are available now, so visit the BGD website to snag one of these opportunities while they're still available. Don't forget to purchase your BOMA Greater Dallas merch before the upcoming Sporting Clays and Golf Tournament. Dress to impress with your official BOMA Greater Dallas collared shirt, which is yours for a $40 donation to the BGD Political Action Committee. Complete the look with a BGD baseball cap for an additional $20. These items are on sale now at the BGD website, bomadallas.org. As a reminder, donations to the PAC must be made with personal funds only. Allieds, listen up. The Allied Council will be hosting a webinar for you. The topic is Marketing and Sales in the New Normal, Connecting to Clients Through Social Media. Our favorite educator, Dr. Stevie Don, will be providing an interactive discussion on this topic on August 5th at 10 a.m. She will share tips and tricks on connecting with clients through social media. Register now at bomadallas.org. Now I would like to introduce Sean Warman with Interstate Restoration, a BOMA Greater Dallas Cornerstone partner. Sean will be introducing our featured speakers for today's luncheon. Hello, Sean. Welcome.
Can you see me? Can you see me?
I can, in your beautiful San Francisco background.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Warman with Interstate Restoration and Construction, and I would like to thank you for all joining us today. This luncheon is typically the annual team luncheon, and although we can't show off our teams, teamwork has meant more this year than ever before. Interstate has been a cornerstone sponsor for the past several years, and we enjoy being a part of such a dynamic and one of the industry's best organizations. For the past 20 years, we have been fortunate to establish trusting partnerships with members like you, and we are excited about what the future holds. We look forward to working with you and your teams and being a part of BOMA Greater Dallas for years to come. Now I'd like to introduce to you today's featured speakers, Carl Falconer and David Gruber with Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance. The Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance, MDHA, leads the development of effective homeless response systems that will make the experience of homelessness in the Dallas and Collin counties rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. MDHA brings together more than 85 shelters, housing, and supportive services programs in retooling homeless services into a crisis response system. President and CEO Carl Falconer and Development and Communications Director David Gruber are joining us today to tell us more about MDHA and answer any questions you may have. Throughout their presentation, if you have any questions, please type it in the Q&A or chat box at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, welcome Carl and David. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. So hopefully this works. And I'm going to start this little slideshow here. And hopefully that works. I'm astounded when it does. Let's put it that way. So, all right, here we are. So I like to call these types of presentations E Pluribus Unum, Ending Homelessness Together. As was mentioned, as you can see on your screen, I am David Gruber. I'm the Development and Communications Director here. What that means in very simple English is I don't do any of the real work. That is all done by my colleagues, and I have the honor of telling you about that work, communications, and then demanding that you pay for it, which is development. And I'm honored to be joined today by the big boss himself, our President and CEO, Carl Falconer. Okay, so what I'd like you to do for just a moment is I'd like you to close your eyes. Okay, now a lot of you are not on video, so I'm just gonna have to trust you that you're closing your eyes. Okay, but close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that we could end homelessness. So not just help individuals, not just manage homelessness. Imagine we could eradicate it. Imagine we could make this intractable social ill a thing of the past. Okay, you can open your eyes now. I imagine that you might say to me, David, that's a fantasy. I want you to think again. There are times in our history, fairly recently in fact, that had I told you, especially in this specific part of the country, that we would eradicate slavery or segregation or Indian removal or institutional anti-Semitism, you might think me a fabulist, yet here we are. And so I truly believe, and we're gonna show you some of the receipts, that we can make homelessness a social ill of the past too. Now, what do we mean when we say ending homelessness? Okay, so first of all, what do we not mean? We do not mean no one ever becomes homeless. What we do mean is that homelessness rarely happens. When it does, it is brief, and it never happens to that person again. It's really important to remember that the modern homelessness crisis that we see today is a fairly new phenomenon. It's just about 40 years old. Two things happened in the mid to late 70s that scholars agree caused this crisis. One is the elimination of a very common type of housing at the time called SROs, or single resident occupancies. And number two, which is slightly more well-known, the shutting down of the state mental hospitals. Now you can learn more about this history if you're a history buff like me and you're interested in that kind of stuff. We have a blog series as well as a presentation on our website called Ending Homelessness, Putting Theory into Practice. And you can, those were both published in April 2020, and you can find those on our website. So how are we doing in Dallas? Let's see how we're doing. Well, though we constantly track those experiencing homelessness, our annual homeless count, which is where these numbers come from, conducted every year around the same time, is the most comprehensive effort to arrive at the number of those experiencing homelessness at any one time. And it's important to emphasize this is a snapshot of these are people experiencing homelessness at any one time. And so the January 2020 homeless count shows us, as you can see here, 4,471 persons experiencing homelessness. Of those, 1,619 are unsheltered, 368 are veterans, 503 are chronically homeless, and 662 are children. Now, one of the most commonly asked questions that I get implicitly or explicitly is this: why are they homeless? And what's even more implicit when that is presented is kind of a thought that people might not even verbalize, of kind of like, yikes, that sounds really scary. Could I ever become homeless? Now, the fact is that most of us will never become homeless because we would lean on our network of social connections. Our families, our friends, our social groups would be there for us to call on. And homelessness occurs when this network of social connections breaks down or was poor to start with and can no longer be activated. I want you to think of yourself as a trapeze artist. So there are three nets that catch each of us from falling into homelessness. Our income would be the first net, our assets would be the second net, and our social network would be the third one. So most of us have some type of income coming in with which we pay our mortgage or our rent. Now, if that went away suddenly, we could still tap our assets, be they savings or investments or retirement plans, etc. And even if we depleted those, most of us would be able to rely on our family, our friends, perhaps members of the house of worship we belong to, etc. And homelessness is the result of falling through that, not just the first two nets, but that final net. Now, this helps explain a troubling phenomenon that we've been talking about for years. It has now become more fashionable, quote unquote, to talk about it, but we've been talking about this for years. so a pronounced overrepresentation of persons of color in the homeless population. So African Americans make up 13% of the population, both in the US and in Dallas County. Kind of interesting coincidence there. African Americans make up 40%, so that's like 3 times, of the US homeless population, and about 28% of the US unsheltered homeless population. And in 2016, which is when we started working on this, and the numbers really haven't changed a whole lot since, we found that African Americans make up 67% of the Dallas homeless population and 70% of the Dallas unsheltered homeless population. So as I kind of put it at the time, if it's a concerning problem in the United States, it's an emergency in Dallas. And now if you think of the 3 nets that I just discussed, it all kind of makes sense. The legacy of 400 years of racism in our country has caused income poverty, right? That first net. Asset poverty. The numbers are quite astounding. For every $100 that in wealth that a average white family has, I think an average Black family has like $8. So it's really striking. And the social network poverty also in the African American population in particular. Because think about it this way, if not only you don't have any assets, but everybody around you doesn't have any assets, then it really becomes quite difficult to lean on that social network. And so given these facts, it would be kind of surprising if we did not see this overrepresentation. So how do we as a community end homelessness, and how does any community end homelessness? Because again, this is not something that's confined to Dallas. So the solution is, the way that we solve the problem of the social network breakdown is to put in place a homeless response system that steps into the gap created by that breakdown. And the role of MDHA and its counterpart in every American community, so every American community has an organization or sometimes a number of organizations like MDHA. Texas, I think, Carl and I were trying to figure out the other day if it was like 12 or 13 or whatever. And each one kind of covers a different area of Texas. But our essential role under the 2009 Hearth Act is to develop and quarterback an effective, unified homeless response system where all homeless services programs work together to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Now that unified word is really, really key, because research shows that we can't end homelessness if each provider does their own things. So you could have the best providers out there doing the best job in the world. The only way we can end homelessness, the only way for that matter that we can actually solve any social problem, is if everybody is working together as a system. And it's MDHA's job to lead that system. And the role of that system is to provide the only thing that ends homelessness, which is, right, drum roll, a home, right? We house the folks that are experiencing homelessness. Now, for some folks, that is all that is needed. For some other folks, we need to throw in a few services to assist them. However, it's really important to emphasize that research and common sense align in this case. If someone does not have a home, house them, and they are no longer homeless. Now that's the beauty of homelessness. Okay, that sounded really weird. Let's try that again. That's the beauty of ending homelessness. It may be hard, but it's not at all complicated. There are problems in our society that we don't know how to solve. There are problems in our society that demand complex solutions. There are problems in our society that demand huge and sweeping change. And fortunately, homelessness is not one of those problems. We know exactly what to do. We know exactly how to do it. We have done it for numerous people. The thing is, and this is why we're here today, is that we can't do it alone. Why not? Why can't we do it alone? Well, 2 primary reasons. remember what it is that causes homelessness: the breakdown of a social network. Now, we can step into its place, we can help rebuild it, but we can't will a social network into being. For that, we need everybody in the community. And it boils down to that one thing that makes the world go round, and that is money. So this is a very kind of simplistic way of looking at it, but essentially you have the main program that provides for homeless program funding from the federal government is called the Continuum of Care, or COC. And it is extremely difficult to end homelessness if all we rely on are these federal dollars. The entire country's main program to combat homelessness, this COC program, only distributes $2.3 billion. And Dallas and Collin counties receive a little more than 17 million of that. And 17 million only goes that far. Now, Carl is going to drill down on the numbers a little deeper. And he's going to talk about what's working in Dallas and what is not. And he's going to share with you, BOMA members specifically, what you can do to help. I'll continue running the slides. So Carl, just let me know when we need to get to the next one. So here's the first one.
Thank you, David. As David said, every year we do what we call a point-in-time count, and we gather data out of our homeless management information system, which is where we gather our data. And so what I'd like to do, this was one slide from our State of Homelessness address that we did back in March. But in case you missed that, I wanted to go over what we know right now. As of March of this year, there were approximately 4,471 people that were homeless on any given night, and that's between sheltered and unsheltered. We know overall that homelessness did in fact decrease by 1.2%. Now, if you take the trend that we were on, the previous 2 years, homelessness increased by 9%. So overall, the trend went down by 10.2%. So as you can see, we have made some strides, and I'll get to why we think that's happening in just a second. Family homelessness decreased as well. Veteran homelessness decreased. Chronic homelessness, which is defined as anyone who has spent more than 1 year on the streets and has a disability, that actually increased. And the reason it increased primarily, we think, is because most of the people that are in the unsheltered population, a significant portion of them, meet the definition of chronic homelessness. The unsheltered homelessness increased and is moving around our continuum of care, even while our outreach teams made more referrals from the streets, and I'll go into that in just a minute. Homelessness decreased in the ages 25 to 34 and 45 to 54, but unfortunately earned incomes of those who moved into housing were not increasing enough in our continuum of care. Next slide. So I put together some initial thoughts on why some of these things are trending the way that they're trending, just so you have an idea of kind of what we're looking at. And then I went ahead and I bolded a couple of things here that I think BOMA in particular could help us with as a community, partnering with some of our provider agencies. The first thing, overall homelessness decreased. It definitely shows that some of the services are working. As David mentioned previously in the presentation, we have a lot of really great providers here in our community, and they're doing a lot of really great work, which means that overall they were able to, as a combined effort, decrease homelessness overall. Family homelessness decreased as well. There's a model we call diversion, which is where we try to take families that are just on the edge of becoming homeless and basically keep them in their housing. So someone who may have missed 1 month's rent payment or a mortgage payment or something of that nature, what we would rather do is keep them in their house, divert them, if you will, from becoming homeless, and that will allow them to stay there. It's much easier for us to do the diversion on the front end and less expensive to the community at large if we can keep them housed as opposed to bringing them in. And we've seen some of these diversion programs and models working in our system. We think that's why family homelessness has decreased. Veteran homelessness decreased. What we think is they're focusing efforts on this subpopulation or this population of homeless individuals in particular really works. For veterans, there is a significant amount of money and resources that are available to veterans, homeless veterans in particular. And so focusing efforts, and by that I mean resources, time, energy, staff, all of this on this population has definitely worked. In fact, we think, and I'm going to kind of preview my own slide, if you will, but we think that sometime in the next year, we actually could end veteran homelessness here in Dallas for good. And again, like David said, it might not mean that no veteran ever becomes homeless, but what it would mean is that any veteran that was homeless would be able to be rehoused very, very quickly, thus effectively ending veteran homelessness. Chronic homelessness increased. We still don't have enough permanent supportive housing units or turnover in those units. Chronic homelessness, as I said before, is when someone has been on the streets or been out homeless for more than a year and has a disability. There's a very specific type of program model called permanent supportive housing. And those units that we have available for people who are chronically homeless are not turning over. So effectively, there's kind of a log jam, if you will, or kind of a kink in our system. People are getting into those units, they're filling up those units, but we're not getting more units online, and they're also not turning over from those units. In other words, moving on to independence. A lot of people that are chronically homeless will need our services for a long time. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that BOMA can help us focus on, particularly around permanent supportive housing in just a minute. Unsheltered homelessness increased and moved around even while outreach teams made more referrals to housing. Our outreach teams that would go out on the streets actually made twice as many referrals to housing than they had made in the previous year. But our unsheltered homelessness actually increased. And what it means is that outreach is not solving the problem community-wide. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that we're not doing good outreach, and it doesn't mean that our outreach teams are not doing good work. What it means is we have not figured out how to effectively cover our entire community with outreach services to be able to get to the unsheltered homeless population and be able to actually find a way to get them housed. Homelessness decreased for those ages 25 to 34 and 45 to 54. Again, another program model, which we call rapid rehousing, is actually working for these age ranges. With rapid rehousing, what you do is you offer case management services and financial assistance to a certain group of individuals or group of people that have been prioritized for this for a short amount of time, and then until they can become independent themselves or self-sufficient themselves, and then they basically move out of your program. So it's a short-term program, and what we found is for the people in 25 to 34 and 45 to 54 age ranges, this type of program model is very effective for them. And then finally, earned incomes are not increasing. Honestly, up until this last spring, we had not figured out how to be able to do this, how to increase the incomes of the people who we are trying to move into housing, or after we moved them into housing, helping them become self-sufficient by increasing their incomes. And that's something that we've definitely tried to work on a lot since the spring. And I'll talk about some of the things that we're trying to do with that as well. Next slide. Finally, I'd like to talk about some of these recommendations as it relates to you all, the Building Owners and Managers Association and individual members. So the recommendations that I would have for you all are things that you could look at doing now. The first thing is we need community champions. to help us get everyone moving in the same direction. We are ready for you to step up as community champions. If you have a passion for this, or you see that this is something that very much interests you in our community, we need you to help step up and help move forward. One of the things we talked about was the lack of affordable or permanent supportive housing units in our community. Right now, the city of Dallas is working with the city council members to try to come up with a way to be able to add approximately 600 new affordable housing units across our city. They're using a combination of trust or bond money from the city of Dallas, as well as general revenue and other ESG CARES Act funding, honestly, from COVID-19 pandemic. And we need your voice. We need you to reach out to the city council members. We need you to reach out and let them know that this is a great idea and we need more affordable housing and we need more permanent supportive housing units for our homeless individuals. The second thing is to be strategic about how you spend your resources and ensure that they are being used effectively. So what's effective use of resources? Whether it's your time, whether it's your talent, whether it's your treasure, whatever it is, what we want you to do is make sure that you're using those resources effectively. So when you're reaching out and talking with homeless service providers or donating to homeless service providers, anything that you have available for them, make sure and ask them whether they're working with the continuum of care. Ask them what kinds of models of programs that they're using and how they're working with all of the other homeless service providers to make sure that we're all working together. One of the most frustrating things that we see in our business is when we see duplication of efforts by our providers or by agencies that didn't even know other agencies were doing the same thing. What we would rather do is have them combine their resources or collaborate together to collectively make a larger impact rather than duplicating the same service between two different providers. So ask those questions whenever you're donating your time, like I said, your talent or your treasure. Make sure you ask those questions. Ask them about effectiveness. Ask them about how many people they moved into housing. That's the ultimate measure of any program that is out there that's trying to serve homeless individuals, is how many people did you get housed? Advocate for more affordable housing and funding for homeless service providers. Again, there's always a chance for you to advocate for more funding for affordable housing. Right now, the city of Dallas also has a rapid rehousing program that we're working with them on to try to house 300 people by September 30th. Our goal is to try to move those people into housing through a rapid rehousing model. This is a perfect example of things that we can do in our community to be able to add to the housing people and move away from homelessness in our community. Next, become partners with our outreach professionals. A lot of you are familiar with some of our outreach teams. We do have outreach teams all across our city. And what they do is they work with people that are unsheltered. They work with people out on the streets. They work with people who typically do not have any place to stay. What we would like you to do, because you have direct contact with a lot of our unsheltered homeless population out on the streets, is to work with our outreach professionals, is to reach out to them, is to contact us and let us know when you see the person that seems to be off of their mental health medication out on the sidewalk or seems to not be right in some way. Reach out to us and we will try to get outreach professionals to reach out to you. I saw Martin Kramer on the list of participants today, and DDI, Downtown Dallas Inc., is definitely one of those partners, one of those outreach partners. But there are a lot of different organizations that are providing outreach services, and we'd love to work with you rather than just running people off or moving people down the street or even honestly just giving them a sandwich. What we'd rather you do is talk with our outreach professionals, call them, develop a relationship with them so they can come out and they can actually provide some direct service and hopefully try to find a way to get that person housed and move them off of the streets to better services and a better life. And then finally, become partners with our service providers to help employ our housed clients. Again, what we're looking for is increasing the income of the people, particularly after we move them into housing. Once we've got them stabilized and they have case management services, one of the things that we are desperately in need of all the time is people or partners that can employ our clients. And so our service providers would love to be able to talk with you and your organizations and your businesses about how we can figure out how to match our clients with the jobs that you might have available. That is that would be a huge increase for us in terms of employing and helping people become self-sufficient when they get housed. And it really wouldn't take a whole lot on your part other than just letting us know what you have available and what you're looking for in terms of people to become employed with your organizations. So that's the final step. Next slide. I think this one kind of sums it up. This is actually David's slide, but I'm speaking on his behalf for this one. He loves this slide, and I think it really kind of speaks to the essence of what we're trying to do. As David said eloquently in the presentation, homelessness is a complex issue, but it is not an issue that we cannot solve. It is something that, in fact, can be solved. And in fact, even in this little, what do you call it? This little example here, you can see that Winnie the Pooh can come up with an idea that's easy enough to end homelessness. And basically, it's about houses. It's about getting people houses, and it's about making sure that everyone has a house, to make sure that everyone can be as wonderful and as connected a community neighbor as anyone else that's in our community. So that's it for our presentation. I wanted to say thank you, and I guess we'll open it up now for questions and answers.
Okay, Carl, that was so great. Couple things before we go into the Q&A that I was thinking about. One, your email that came out today, your newsletter, that you interview an intern that graduated from UNT, and really, what came out of it, from what I read from it, I know everybody should read this. You go to the website, I'm sure it's there for
it's on the
everyone.
blog. Yeah.
Yes, to see, but where there's a will, there's a way, is the biggest thing, I think. Just coming out, summarizing what you're saying today is that, and then the hard conversation series that you guys do is wonderful. My boss and I are going to be watching virtually the next one that you guys have coming up in mid-August. But I think just thank you guys for the education on homelessness. I think, like I said, mentioned to you guys before, that I always have members that have reached out to us just saying, how can we help? So with that, let's see, we've got a few here from that we just got right now. So the first one is, how does the MDHA differ from the City of Dallas Office of Homeless Solutions, and how do the two groups interact, or what is the relationship between them?
That's a very good question. We actually work very well together. The easiest way to describe it is our scope is a little larger than the Office of Homeless Solutions. The Office of Homeless Solutions really is focused more on, number one, the City of Dallas, and the City of Dallas funding and anything that has to do kind of with the City of Dallas. We're focused on Dallas County and Collin County, as well as the City of Dallas. So our scope is a little larger. We also directly monitor and have interaction directly with our homeless service providers. The city does that on a smaller scale. They have contracts with service providers. We have contracts through HUD that we have to monitor with our service providers. Our amount is about $17 million. I think if we added that up with the city of Dallas, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 3 to 5 million, maybe, that they have contracts with homeless service providers directly. But it's mostly scope, but we work very well with the City of Dallas Office of Homeless Solutions. It was really designed to make sure that the city pays attention to homelessness, and we think it's great. We think it's a real benefit for us here in this community. A lot of communities don't have something like that. So we really.
And the director of the office is actually on our board, and he and Carl are like that. I mean, they're constantly talking and working together. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Excellent. So the next question, do you feel the mental health crisis is a significant factor in homelessness? And are there resources available as part of the outreach program to address mental health issues?
Yes, definitely. Mental health is a big issue that we have. We are the only, or one of, I guess, the largest metropolitan area that does not have a mental health or a state hospital that's close to us here. And we work closely with the North Texas Behavioral Health Authority, which has a lot of behavioral health services and funding that comes through the state and from the federal government to our area. So we work really closely with them, trying to tie in their mental health services with our outreach teams and with our shelters. They have several different clinics in several different centers within our our homeless service providers that help people with mental health and substance abuse. But ultimately, it's not the only cause of homelessness. And it really, like David said, it really comes back to that social network. There are plenty of people that have serious mental illnesses that are housed in our community. It's really that serious mental health issue that goes along with the lack of support network or lack of support services to be able to help them along.
here's another way of looking at it. About 44, and that's why I'm happy that Carl kind of ended with that part. It's important to understand that you don't need to solve somebody's mental health in order for them to be housed. 44 million Americans every year suffer from mental illness. I'm one of them. If I didn't take my 50 milligrams of Paxil every morning, I would not be as wonderful and cheery as I am right now. And you don't have 44 million Americans about to become homeless. So most people who suffer from mental illness can totally manage to remain housed. And you likely don't know that your coworker does suffer from some type of mental illness. So yeah, so it's really important to emphasize that it really is that breakdown in the social network that is the proximate cause.
But on the other side, Christine, I did want to add though that when we do see people with mental illness out on the streets, that's one of our highest priority populations that we're trying to serve. So that's why I said, really what we need to try to do is figure out ways that we can get our outreach teams connected with your business owners and managers so that they have someone that they can contact who's a professional. The worst thing, or I don't want to say the worst thing, but one of the least effective things is to have someone who's a non-professional trying to provide services to someone who has had a psychotic break or is having mental health issues. We really want professionals involved in that so that they can appropriately deal with what the issues are and then also help them get to longer term services.
Exactly. We probably wouldn't want a social worker to do Sean's work for him and try to restore a building. I'm assuming that because of the name, that's what Sean does. So same way, we don't want, we don't want you to try to solve those problems because it's not what you're good at. It's not what we're good at either. There's social workers that's their job.
As you probably know, we have a lot of our members are not just here in Uptown or downtown Dallas. We've got buildings everywhere, right? McKinney, Frisco, Irving. So I imagine, for those that are in those areas that reaching out to you guys, you can easily, like you say, we have Downtown Dallas Inc. that have the connection with you guys. And so I'm sure that you guys have that out there in the suburbs have those connections too. So Martin brought up a really great question. He says, great presentation, good to hear homelessness has, the numbers have dropped. What percent of the 1,619 unsheltered homeless are in the greater downtown area, Deep Ellum, Cedars, and Central Business District?
Ooh, a significant amount. I think I have a statistic for that, or I've ran the data for that. Martin, off the top of my head, I can't tell you the exact number, but I think somewhere in the neighborhood of, for the unsheltered population, man, I want to say 2/3 is the number that seems to be coming up in my head, but I can actually send that information to you. And I can send that to you directly, Martin. I can send it to you as well, Christine, just so people know. We have that tracked. We have where the populations are by city within all of our areas, so I can tell you kind of where they are specifically.
Okay. Another question we had was, with COVID-19, how has that hampered your efforts to reach the homeless, and if so, how?
It's hampered our efforts a little bit more, honestly, after people have been housed, because we're trying to keep social distance. We're trying to do more things virtually, or I should say our service providers are trying to do things more virtually and trying to social distance. The people in the shelters, we don't have any choice. We have to be there. Our service providers have to be there hand in hand with them. Our people out on the streets, we're trying to social distance, but we still have outreach teams that are going out and providing services. So one of the good things about our service providers prior to this pandemic is that they were already familiar with a lot of communicable diseases and how to control those. And so a lot of the measures they already had in place for making sure that we didn't get other people sick, but they didn't get us sick as well. So a lot of things, honestly, we already had in place as homeless service providers, just by the very nature of the people we deal with. But for the most part, it's really about that social distancing. It definitely makes it harder. The other thing I think that's been the biggest, that's been the hardest thing for us, and probably for a lot of your members as well, is the shutting down of businesses and the shutting down of offices. Is you know, if when the driver's license offices are closed, or the Social Security office is closed, and the birth certificate office is closed, or the libraries are closed, honestly, it makes it really difficult on our population. Our population seek out some of those places for services and for being able to get documents to be able to move into housing. And it's really kind of slowed down that whole process.
Another question we got was, how does Dallas compare to other similar metroplex areas around the country?
In terms of I assume they're talking about the number of homeless people.
I think so, yeah.
We're pretty close to, I would say we're kind of right on the cusp there. We're certainly not as behind the curve on homelessness as some places like Seattle and Los Angeles and New York. The homelessness in those areas, San Francisco, are really just out of control. I mean, they're doing everything they possibly can. I've talked with service providers out there, but they're way behind the curve on the number of people that are homeless versus the number of people that they can actually serve. We're right on the cusp here in Dallas, so we're really close. There's a study that was done by a person, a PhD researcher who is pretty famous in our circles for doing a lot of homeless research, and he ran some statistical analysis. And when I ran it here for Dallas, based off of his research, it showed that we were right on the edge of our homeless population exponentially increasing, which means we're at a definite point in time where we have an opportunity to turn it around rather than it going up and up and up and getting to someplace again. You know, I hate to pick on them, but you know, Los Angeles or San Francisco, one of those places where homelessness is just so far out of control that they're throwing tons and tons of money. I hear numbers like trillions of dollars that they're throwing at homelessness out there, and it's not really making much of a dent at all. It's just because their homeless situation is so far out of control from what they have. We're not there yet. I hope we never get there. We're fighting every day to keep it moving in the opposite direction, to really make sure that we're trying to reduce homelessness rather than it expanding. But Dallas is a metropolitan area. And with the growth that we have here in the housing market here, it could easily become something as bad as a San Francisco or a Seattle. It really could. And we're trying everything we can here to create those partnerships, to get the community involved, and make sure we never get to that point. But I'd say right now, sorry, that was a long answer to your question, Christine. I'd say right now we're kind of in the middle. We're not the best, we're not the worst. I'd say we're somewhere in the middle.
Well, that was not long at all. It was very informative. I think I might have told you guys when we met that BOMA International, our umbrella, sort of say, when we had a town hall meeting with all of the other locals in the nation and Canada talking about homelessness. It was the topic of the town hall meeting. So it was interesting to hear what all the other cities are going through and how they're interacting with their community and things like that. So yeah, it kind of goes right off of what you're saying. We're kind of like right in the middle of that spectrum and seeing how that goes. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have, except I do kind of have my own little five quick questions that I do.
You've prepared us for these, okay.
Yeah, I only gave you one question to think about. And this is just something to kind of tie into my theme of connecting with people, communicating with others. So real quick, first one is, what is your favorite form of communication to use when trying to connect with someone?
Favorite? Face-to-face, always. I mean, mine is always face-to-face. That's my favorite.
Oh yeah, totally, same, face-to-face.
I wanna shake their hand, give them a hug. That's who I am.
I have to hold them back nowadays because of the pandemic.
It's hard. It's the new norm now that we have to get used to. It's
Totally.
so difficult.
Yeah.
So the next question is, when you need to have a difficult conversation, be it bad or an irate client or person, what form of communication do you prefer? Email, phone call, Zoom, snail mail?
Still face-to-face, if I had my choice.
Totally.
Yeah, face-to-face is always my choice, especially for hard conversations. I don't mind sending emails for happy things, you know, good things, but honestly, it's always face-to-face for the toughest conversations.
Yeah, same.
But the closer I can get to face-to-face, the better off I am.
Yep.
Okay. How do you move the conversation from someone that talks a lot to another person in the group or yourself?
That's a good one, because I'm usually that person who talks a lot.
I was once upon a time, I did 100% commission sales, if you've ever done that. And I like phone sales. It's one of the hardest jobs. I never want to do that again. But anyway, I learned that the two most important words in the English language are so and now. So
yeah,
that's what I do.
I've seen everything happen to me specifically when I've been talking too much, where someone will reach over and put their hand on my arm or something to let me know I'm talking too much. Or I think the better thing that I've seen, which is kind of a tactic that people have used, is everybody speaks once before anybody speaks twice. And I've seen that where you go around the room and everybody has to say something, or at least have the opportunity to say something before the next person. And so people will remind me of that kind of idiom, if you will, and then I always kind of get quiet again. So
It's passion, Carl. That's what it is. About what you're talking about.
Passion, 'cause I'm glad you can see that, Christine. It is.
That's how I am. I know I can be like that. So how do you get out of an awkward situation?
Depends on what it is. As the
Oh, yeah.
president, I just tell him to leave my office. No, just kidding. Right, David?
I will usually say they just need to talk to Carl. That's how I get out of the awkward situation. And
I
he's
use that tactic too.
yeah.
Exactly. I usually make up an excuse or something, you know, I have to go work out or, you know, something like that.
Yeah. Last one. Is there one positive story that has come out of this COVID time that you have? Silver lining.
Ooh, wow. Do you have one, David, off the top of your head?
Well, I would say it's not so much a story about an individual per se, but it's just that, and this is something that Carl talked about at the end of his State of Homelessness address, which you can go and watch on our website, by the way. And we're seeing this all around the country, is that things that seemed impossible before COVID-19 are now possible. And if we want to, and specifically if we look at the example of Britain, the UK made a decision with that they needed to get all of the unsheltered homeless off the streets, preferably into housing, but if not into housing, some type of arrangement, because you can't, how can you stay home if you don't have a home? And they did something that literally would have taken years in a matter of days and weeks. And so now their question is, okay, what do we do now? Because the last thing we want to do is throw somebody back on. If it is temporary, throw them back on the street. So now they're trying to, you know, be really aggressive with offering social services and stuff like that. And, you know, there are other places in the world that have done similar things, but specifically the UK has just, I mean, really gone above and beyond. And that's what we need to understand, is that we do have a moment here where we need to take advantage of this moment and do as much as we can to end homelessness. And we don't want to look back, you know, 2-3 years down the road and be like, oh man, like that was, you know, that was a moment and we let that crisis go to waste, essentially.
And I'll mention a specific incident that happened with my friend, again, Kevin Oden at the Office of Homeless Solutions. There was a person who had just tested positive for COVID-19 at the hospital. And the hospital was able to call Kevin directly. Kevin was able to get one of his staff to transport that person to a hotel, get them quarantined, and give them medical care. And then eventually now we'll be able to move that person into housing as well. This is a person who is homeless, but that's just an example kind of what David was talking about. On a normal day, you know, someone who has a medical condition or has medical problems, just being able to call up a service provider and immediately get placed somewhere where they can get that medical attention and then get a path to housing is sometimes a challenge. I mean, it really is under normal circumstances, but with COVID-19, we've kind of broken the rules. We've kind of said, look, there are no rules anymore. We're going to get people housed. And that's really kind of where we're at right now. And we're hoping that all the community, including your BOMA members, will jump on board with that. We'll jump in and say, yes, let's take advantage of this opportunity and let's get as many people housed as we possibly can.
Well, that is a great, I love that. That just sort of happened to be like the last question. And I love it because we've all kind of had to flip the switch, and on decisions that we have been a little leery on, we've just done it. And so I'm glad to hear that that's also happening with you guys too. And even then with the blog, David, that you had today, just about what the federal government has put forth, the money, the funds that they're putting forward has changed significantly from, was it millions to billions? I don't have the numbers right in my mind, but it was astounding to know that was how quick of a switch, big difference that happened. So.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys again for your time. I could talk all day with you guys. And we will.
Thanks for
I will
having us.
definitely, we'll be reaching out soon because I do want to introduce you to a few more people.
Wonderful.
So yeah, so thank you
you.
guys again.
Thank you,
And
Christine. And again, if any of your members or yourself need anything from us, you have our email addresses, please email us, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to connect you to service providers or any ways that you can possibly help. So thank you again.
Yeah, and we'd love to, if you have like a lunch and learn, or you want us to present at your
Absolutely.
church or social group virtually, you can do it, no problem.
yes, and excellent, excellent virtual skills that you guys have done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you guys again, and I want to thank Interstate Restoration for sponsoring the luncheon, our virtual luncheon as well. So that wraps it up. Thanks to everyone that joined us today, and hope to see you all very soon at our upcoming events. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, guys.